Good afternoon, everyone. If you can hear me, can I hear good afternoon at the chat box? Hello, can you hear me? Sharon, are you there? Good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sharon, are you there? Can I hear from you? Good to have you back again. It's another wonderful week. Good to have you, and good to know that you're still sustaining the tempo. Naina Gambo Jr., I see you, Balat Kamal, Ahmed Sijani, Alini Bash, Joel. I see you all. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. It's Babas with us. Afiniki Nuhu, thank you for coming in. Ahmed Tijani Ibrahim. Thank you, everyone, for staying tuned. Today we'll be continuing with what we started with last week. As you all know, democracy and the state has been the topic, and our various facilitators have dealt with it very well. Where we started with that is a module that we are dealing with. I remember understanding democracy and what makes democracy to work was carried out, was delivered by Shehu Justice Onaride, and democracy and elections, evaluating Nigeria's electoral law, administration, and process for political transformation. We heard that from Moritz Bigon. Do you remember? Forming and strengthening political parties in Nigeria to global best practices is what we're going to be doing today. And we have a facilitator, a seasoned facilitator with us. I'll be introducing him shortly, but I just want more of us to come in first. And we're just 49. Let's increase it to 60, 70. Please inform your colleagues, inform other leaders from your various groups, and so that they will join in, so that they will be aware that the meeting has started. My name is Nicholas Ushoja Fesu. I'll be anchoring this program today. And if you can still hear me, give me a smile this time around, not a yes or no, not good afternoon, but look for the icon of a smile. And let me see, somebody is showing me tears. No, I want an icon for a smile. If you are there with me, please let me know that you are hearing me. Yes, Father Praise, interesting. Good to have you. Good to have you, Father Praise. That's the only person. I want to see it on the chat. Yes, Juliet Luca. I've seen yours. Smedia Graph. Sadia Ahmed, thank you. Ino Abete, thank you. Peace, Iyowesi. I ask you again, are you related to Samuel Iyowesi from Benue State? Jane Joseph. Yeah, I can see you. Jane Joseph, Christina, yes. Fimbong, Nambo, welcome. Esther Ezra. Okay, Peace said no, thank you. Raham, okay. Daniel Kundi, yes, Obida, Ober, thank you for joining us. Yes, the number is increasing. We have 55%. Nomishi Blessing, good to have you. Balat Kamel, is this a smile? I say smile and give me question marks. Okay. Good news. May I just advise you to change by carrying the device name. Please help us try. Okay, I think I'm back. Hello, can you still hear me? I was kicked out. Okay, thank you, Farah. So I'll be bringing in somebody, a very seasoned facilitator, a man we respect so much. He's a mentor to us at LeThought. I'm going to bring the person that will do justice to the topic that I just introduced to you. He's our host. We look up to him as well. He's mentoring us from afar, even though he might not know. He's our boss. The boss of bosses must be our own boss. So I'm going to bring in he's somebody that you will all enjoy listening to. He is the deputy director of International Republican Institute Nigeria. He's no other person. He's no other person but Mr. Sunday Alao. Please, can you unmute yourself, sir, and start, and the floor is yours. Thank you so very much for finding time to be with us. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me from the other side?
Very well, sir.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to see if I will be able to share my slides. So can you see the slide?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, that's good. So it's a pleasure joining you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I also appreciate the work LeThought is doing. I think forums like this is what we need to enrich our understanding of how democracy works, especially how we should be able to participate within the parameters and institutions of democracy. I was fascinated with the song that was played in the intro. I sometimes you wonder this get when they make this production. You know, in the 70s and early 80s, we grew up listening to Fela, and I think the guy who sang this song is African China or something.
African China, you're right.
Yeah, and you just wonder if anything has changed. Indeed, there was a post I saw recently where they captured the campaign materials used by Shehu Shagari. That was in 1978, 79. Incidentally, he was still talking about the same issues we are still talking about today. The same water, the same light, the same road, everything we're still campaigning on today were the same issues that were articulated in that campaign. Perhaps there are more things that needs to be done to get the kind of changes we want. And I think that is also why it's important to have this kind of conversation, especially with the kind of audience that you are working with. and that are on this platform. So thank you for the opportunity. I will share thoughts on forming and strengthening political parties in Nigeria to global best practices. So let me start by saying, I think one of the challenges we've had is always trying to align ourselves with global best practices without necessarily taking an in-depth look of what are our peculiar and prevailing circumstances. And I think that to some extent has also affected our growth. We have emphasized on democracy, which is a foreign concept, at the detriment of development, which is an indigenous concept. Because the end of governance is development. Whatever mode of government system or government practice you adopt, what matters at the end of the day is development. And development is quantified in terms of the qualitative improvement in the lives of citizens. So if we are still hearing the song of African China, which re-echoes the song of Fela in the 870s, in the 890s, then perhaps there should be a rethink of either the system we have adopted or the way and manner those systems are being practiced. And I think there is a general consensus that democracy has come to stay. So it then means that the conversation should really be on how that system is being practiced. And incidentally, the topic I am asked to discuss will probably give us some insights based on one of the pillars of democracy, which is political parties. I try to capture, so I have an outline, introduction from formation of political parties in Nigeria, issues that affect parties. So I broke this into three, how parties are being formed, what are the issues militating against functional party system, and how can these party systems be strengthened, and what are their prospects in Nigeria, for example. So I try to emphasize the relevance of political parties in my first slide. Parties are, of course, formal institutions of representative democracy. They are indeed one of the very, very fundamental institutions that can enable democracy to function the way it ought to, especially representative democracy. Because by implication, democracy presupposes the promotion and the protection of everybody's interests, provided that person is within the political system. But it is practically impossible to have everybody playing one role or the other in the governmental system. So there has to be a process through which some individuals will be leveraged to assume control of the levers of power, but they will do so in consultation and with the consent of others. And so political party provides that vehicle through which people are organized, people are consciously mobilized, into believing in some certain key cardinal objectives, especially objectives of government policy, state policy. And then they use this state policy or public policy as a means through which they are able to sensitize, educate, and win over the support of citizens through votes, to assume the levers of power. And when they get to these positions of power, the intent is for them to be able to implement those policies or ideologies that they have articulated for which the people had voted them into office. And like I said, the end of all of this is development. So the other nice thing about democracy is the fact that if that party and the people that party has thrown into power are unable to provide the kind of development that was envisaged, then democracy provides an avenue of changing them periodically, especially when another turn for electioneering comes. And this, strengthens our resolve in sticking to democracy, because there is the possibility of alternation of power based on performance and based on consent, given to you by the citizens who feel you are either capable to be in the helm of power, or by virtue of having tested you, they remove you from that power. So political party provides that mechanism through which the influx of personnel, of those running the affairs of government are being controlled, most especially through election by citizens. So practically, political parties are indispensable to the proper functioning of every democracy. The third aspect of democracy I will talk about here is the issue of the fact that democracy provides that linkage between those in government and those that are governed. And how do I say this? It actually, the political parties actually serve as a channel through which there's a flow, both ways, in and out of government, of personnel who eventually get into office. So at every point, political parties should provide that platform through which there should be constant interaction, constant engagement to get feedback. You assume the control of the levers of power, there should be a mechanism through which you are able to gauge the impact of your performance on the lives of the citizens. Do you, having gauged that, having gotten that feedback, do you reinforce on what you have been doing based on positive feedback, or do you change the direction of your public policy, because of the negative feedback you have gotten? So in essence, political parties remain relevant in as much as the people still perceive, their functionalities, their functionaries in power as performing the role that they have, consented them to do during the electioneering. And once they feel you are not performing that role, then you become irrelevant and then you become voted out of power. And we have seen in history where parties even get extinct because they lose popular support from citizens. And as a result, they just die off. While some other parties begin to get more popular and begin to become, attracted into maintaining or retaining offices. So I just try to throw open what democracy is. So we cannot have democracy without having political parties. Political parties provide the basis upon which the idea of democracy is sustained. That having the people to decide who goes into power, and also having the choice to either retain them or to reject them from being in power. Now, in practically all political systems, there are certain measures of control that are being exerted over the existence and operationalization of political parties. In most of the political systems that I was able to search through, I think there are constitutional provisions that guarantees the existence of these political parties. Even though these constitutions are more elaborate than others, like the Nigerian constitution has very elaborate provision for the existence of political parties. And I saw that the Constitution of the United States only mentions the fact that political parties will operate in as much as they do not impinge on the rights of the citizens, with respect to freedom of association, with respect to freedom of expression, and things like that. So in every case, there are fundamental provisions outlined in the constitution of the country that provides the basis upon which political parties exist and upon which they operate. So for us in Nigeria, it's also in the Nigerian constitution, I think section 222. And even more elaborate provisions are also made in the Electoral Act, which of course deals with the internal party processes. We will look at some of them as we go down in the course of this conversation. And so the emphasis, the fact that we're even having these constitutional provisions outlined in the constitution emphasizes the fact that political parties are very, very fundamental to the survival of democracies and to the survival of government. So I will plunge just directly into the case in Nigeria. Political parties in Nigeria are, of course, the powers are derived from the constitution, like I said. And I think until the amendment, the current amendment to the Nigerian constitution is passed, political parties remain the only channel through which political leaders are recruited. And what do I mean? You cannot be recruited into a political office without being sponsored by a political party. But the current amendment of the Constitution, I think the National Assembly has passed a clause that can guarantee for independent candidature, in which case you can run for a political office without necessarily being affiliated to a political party. But that has to be passed and probably gazetted before it can take effect. But as we speak, every person occupying every political position in Nigeria must be sponsored or must run on the platform of a political party. So this emphasizes the inevitability of having a functional democracy, a functional political party in a democracy, more so in Nigeria. A whole lot of processes were outlined for how political parties can get formed. But I think for me, the fundamental is the fact that, which is one of the highlighted during the introduction. Political parties usually is comprised of individuals who share common belief, who share common perspective on public policy. And that is where the issue of ideology comes in. So the people who are members, who subscribe to be members of a political party, must express similar thought, similar belief on certain identifiable policies or ideologies upon which the government, the intended government that they want to form, will be operated. You know, so it means that there has to be a conscious effort to ensuring that the members of political parties are agreeable before we can even begin to have the thought of getting a party that can function very well. And I think this is part of the challenge we have in Nigeria. Because if you recall, by 1998, the current program for the transition to democracy was put in place within 9 months. And within these 9 months, political parties were expected to be formed, to get registered, and to participate in elections. So what we ended up having were people just contacting themselves and people just, you know, mobilizing people without really getting to understand or getting to publicize what public policy will inform the formation and the operation of those political parties. Now, that is also why you see a whole lot of challenge with people remaining in one party, because they have not subscribed to a particular line of thought. They have not subscribed to shared public policy or even shared ideology. I have been trying to avoid the word ideology because it's even a very deeper conversation, you know, that doesn't even exist, you know, in our current political environment. So there should have been a minimum shared understanding of a perspective of how government processes should be undertaken by people who subscribe to be members of a political party before you can now begin to even seek for registration. And that was why you will recall that the parties that were formed in the First Republic were probably the parties that were more ideologically oriented, because those parties had existed long time before they were formed or they were transmuted into political parties. In the north, you had the Mutanen Arewa organization. In the southwest, it was the Egbe Omo Odudua. You know, so these were cultural groupings that had identified themselves based on certain vested interests, you know, and that which the people were strongly attached to and strongly entrenched to it. You know, so when those groupings eventually metamorphosed into a political party, they were stuck and they were binded together, you know, and we saw how those governments were able to implement policies that they had professed even before, you know, they got into power. But we haven't had those opportunities for proper nurturing of ideological thoughts among people who have decided they want to be members of the same political party. You know, so the first thing we have missed is the fact that we have not had a situation where people were identifiable based on shared perception on similar public policy. So once you get registered, you meet the criteria that is set out in the Constitution. And one of them is that you have to have national spread for the purposes of federal character. You have to have national spread in at least 24 states out of 36. And it's interestingly too, you have to have a spread of your leadership. And for me, that is also worrying, because it does appear people tend to form political party by just reading out what are the requirements by the Constitution and then struggling to meet up those requirements. So for example, you have people in Lagos, but who want to form political party and who know that they require 25 or 24, they require presence in 24 states. They just begin to recruit individuals in the remaining states of the country who do not even understand what the party they have asked them to join means, you know. And the second one also is the fact that you have to have leadership of the party to be spread amongst or within the country. And so you have people who are leaders of the party from different parts of the country and who by themselves do not even have the electoral value to even guarantee victory in local council elections. But some of them are national leaders of political parties. So all of this is intended just to enable people to meet the minimum threshold outlined by the Constitution for them to get registered. But then they get registered and then we don't see that party behaving or performing as a party ought to perform. So unfortunately, that is the requirement. And that is what parties have to do in order to get registered. But then when you get registered, the next struggle becomes the struggle to win political office. So the third component of my conversation now is the kind of political parties we have now, they are only interested in grabbing power. You know, of course, in the classical definition of political parties, one of its aim is to be able to win political power and even to retain political power. But winning and retaining political power is one thing. Using that power in order to achieve development is another thing completely. So you can win power, of course, by winning over people, by propaganda, by doing all that is required to mobilize people. But then when you get to power, how are you still able to retain those fundamental public policies that you have professed? How are you able to implement them to the satisfaction of citizens in a way and manner that citizens' confidence, citizens' trust in you is retained even for you to win elections subsequently? So these are conversations that, you know, has become troubling. So all what we have is political party grabbing power, and because they have failed to enunciate and implement policies that has led to development, and for the fear of being rejected in the next cycle of elections, they resort to all manner of things, including intimidation, manipulation, electoral violence, and what have you, just to ensure that they retain those positions. And that is the issue, the challenge you have with illegitimate government, because when government doesn't have the popular support of citizens, then it lacks legitimacy and it becomes illegitimate. So these are some of the things that we have in the course of the formation of political parties missed, which are fundamental to the sustainability of these parties and also fundamental to the ability of these parties to deliver development, which should be the end goal of having these political parties in the first place. So I also identified some salient issues or some salient features of party formation in Nigeria. It's supposed to be non-discriminatory. Membership is supposed to be open to all. In my subsequent conversation, you will realize that in some societies, in some political systems, political parties are formed along lines certain privileges, you know, but in Nigeria, it is non-discriminatory. Everybody has the freedom and the ability to be able to join whatever party he chooses. Spread of leadership, I have talked about this, registration and deregistration by INEC. So let me just point out the fact that the Constitution also empowers INEC by virtue of the Electoral Act to manage and regulate the activities of political parties. The regulation of political parties in Nigeria is very high-handed when you compare to other countries, for example, United States, where they allow political parties to have certain level of autonomy to regulate themselves. So yeah, the Electoral Act provides very explicit provision on how internal party processes are to be undertaken. And if you deviate, then you can be sanctioned, even including being deregistered by INEC. Political parties by their nature are meant to participate in elections like we see them in Nigeria. And I've also talked about the issue of transformation from political association to political parties. The other issues about our parties in Nigeria is the possibility of mergers and defections. And I have fundamentally explained why this is possible. Because there hasn't really been strict demarcation along these political parties based on ideological identification. So people defect and people also merge. Even though there has been, I think there are more stringent conditions now outlined in the Constitution that is meant to discourage mergers and also to discourage defections. And I'm sure some of you are aware there have been recent court rulings that have sought to remove incumbent executive office holders, especially governors, who have defected from the party from which they won elections to other parties. The contention there is the parties that they left were the ones people voted, because people's faces are not on the ballot. What is on the ballot are the political parties. So classically, it's the parties that own the votes, and then they confer those votes on the individual. So if the individual chooses to leave the party, then he should relinquish those votes, you know. But we are people of the letters of the Constitution. And in the case of this, especially for executive office holders, there hasn't been explicit clause that emphasizes the processes through which an executive office holder might lose his seat on the virtue of defection. But we have those provisions for the members of the National Assembly. And that is why I think they have been treading a little bit more cautiously in this respect. All right, so I will go to the issues that affect parties. I hope you can hear me from the other end.
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, fine. So I will go to some of the issues that affect political parties. Some of these issues, they have multinational or even international dimension. Like I said, some of these concepts, some of these practices are borrowed. And sometimes when we are borrowing them, we just take everything without paying attention to how it will function in our own society. So I'm looking at political party system as one thing, as one very critical issue that affects the proper functioning of political parties. We have various types of political party system, but essentially there are three dimensions of it. There is the one-party system, which is when only one political party is registered to operate in the political system. Countries like China, countries like Cuba practice this kind of system where it's only one party that is registered. Now, this does not mean that there is no opposition within the party, but those opposition, we call them caucuses, we call them factions. They exist within the party, and once they are resolved, you know, everybody still remains within the party, and everybody aligns with whatever decision is made in the party. And the people that practice this, what they seek to do is to discourage dissent. Like we do here. You will notice that in Nigeria, there is so much dissension based on party identification. In fact, sometimes people sacrifice development on the altar of dissent. Because it doesn't belong to my party, then I will continually oppose whatever he wants to do, even if that thing he wants to do will lead to development. You know, so for them, development is more critical than dissent. So they try to de-emphasize dissent. They try to de-emphasize divisions, especially political party divisions, in preference to having one political party who will continually steer the affairs of the economy or of the state. The second kind of party system is the two-party system, the one you practice in America. There are two dominant parties, and then power alternates between these two periodically. And this is based on the identification of the people with what policy of the party they feel will be more suitable for them. So that's why sometimes in the US, you know, they vote for the Republicans at some point. At the other point, they vote for the Democrat, based on the mood of the people and based on the prevailing socioeconomic condition and what they feel in their judgment, what party will better serve the purpose of addressing the concerns of that time. The third party system is the multi-party system, where there are several political parties existing in the society. Now, multi-party system is what we practice, where there are, I think we have about 18. Multiple parties operating, and you have the right to choose whichever one you feel is adjustable to you. Now, The only thing I want to emphasize here is the challenge we have always had is, even though we have adopted multi-party system or even two-party system, there is always that tendency to move towards the one dominant party system. If you recall, within 1999 to even 2015, the PDP held sway, and it was nearly impossible, especially in some parts of this country, for you to defeat the PDP. So there's always a tendency for developing societies, especially Nigeria, to move towards the one dominant party system. Like you have the case in Nigeria. We just mentioned some governors that are being threatened to lose their seats by courts. Most of them left the opposition party to come join the ruling party. Now, that is the tendency, and that is what is replicated in most developing societies. Now, there is a concentration of power, especially at the center. So the party that is in government has a tendency of appropriating so much wealth and so much resources to the detriment of the capacity of other parties to be able to function, such that every serious politician will feel he will only express his politics better when he joins the party in government. So there's always that tendency to have the ruling party to become the dominant party, unfortunately. The other system, the other issue I want to discuss is the electoral system. Now, there are two dominant electoral systems, the proportional representative system and the plurality system. We practice the plurality system, where election is decided by a simple majority. You know, once you have more votes than your opponent, then you are adjudged to have won the elections. That system is similar to the system we call winner takes all system. And it intensifies the kind of desperation you see among politicians, especially for us in Nigeria, you know, to want to belong to a party that gives them a higher prospect of winning. The proportional representation, on the other hand, emphasizes more the role of the party than the individual. So the votes goes to the party, and the party will decide to nominate individuals that will represent the party in the parliament. So that gives the party more powers, more disciplinary powers, more discretionary powers than the plurality, the one we have in Nigeria. And that is why most times people win election, they completely remove or delink themselves from the political parties that sponsor them. And then it becomes a very, very heated process where individuals begin to lord over the political parties. Even sometimes you end up having the political parties being subject to the individuals that have won elections on the banner of the party. So the fact that we practice the plurality electoral system has also created more danger, especially for us, with respect to the kind of desperation we see among politicians just to win elections. Even if it means deploying the worst mechanism of winning those elections. All what matters is winning election. And that's the one we call the winner takes all syndrome. If you practice this kind of system, then there is a whole stress on the ability of the functionaries of powers, you know, to be able to perform. Because once they get into office, the next thing they are thinking is amassing as much wealth, you know, to face the next election. Because for them, what is more important to them is winning the election than serving either the people or even remaining loyal to the political party. The other issue that I highlighted here that affects the conduct of our parties is the system of government, either presidential system or parliamentary system. Parliamentary system is more disciplinary, especially with respect to the party having a firm control of its members in the parliament. And this also emphasizes the link between the party and the elected officials. I just mentioned earlier that in Nigeria, once people get elected, there's a tendency for them to get delinks from the political party that sponsored them. That is more prevalent in the presidential system, where it is the individual that campaigns, you know, to be elected. In the parliamentary system, the party campaigns, and when you win election, it's the party's, you win to the party's credit. In fact, it's the party that wins, and then you get nominated. So the party exercises a firm control, a more strict disciplinary control over its members, especially in the parliament. And what that means is we are now able to have those in government to be able to work within the confines of the policy framework that the parties campaign on in the parliamentary system, much more than in the presidential system. In fact, as we speak, for those who watch politics very well, the parties even find it difficult to be able to control or even influence the decision made by its members in the parliament. It's that bad. In fact, if you look at the processes of electing principal officers of the parliament, National Assembly, Senate, the House of Representatives, or even the state assemblies, the classical idea of having the caucuses is they are to serve as the eyes and the nose of the parties in the parliament. So it's the parties that should ordinarily nominate who these individuals are. I'm talking about the majority leader, the minority leader, the whip, and all of those. But we have ended up having situations in Nigeria where when these parliaments are formed, the members of the parliament will want to decide by themselves and for themselves who become their principal officers without even consultation with the party. In fact, the current assembly, I think the list of the individuals nominated by the PDP was completely rejected in the House of Representatives. And they nominated completely different set of people who are still, representing the interests of the party in the House of Representatives. So it defeats the idea of having the party in government, because the party has now shown that it has even lost control over its members in the parliament. This doesn't happen in the parliamentary system of government, which is one of the challenges that is affecting us. Their citizen participation and membership, I classified it into parochial, passive, and active. And I think this is where we, the young ones, or those of you, the young ones, should pay more critical attention. Democracy thrives on participation, and more so active participation. So if you are passive, you are inactive, you are parochial, you are directly conferring legitimacy on people to act on your behalf without your consent, and to act on your behalf without your feedback, and to act on your behalf without regards to if what they are doing leads to your development. And if that persists, you have a situation whereby even when it comes to the opportunity for you to vote, they will now even begin to make this critical decision of voting on your behalf, like we see in Nigeria. So the level of citizen participation makes both political parties and indeed democracy to be more responsive to development. And how do we mean? We may have very fantastic statistics of how citizens vote. I don't even think it's fantastic, but even let's take for granted that it's fantastic. Participation doesn't end during election. In fact, what you do in between election is much more critical to what happens to during elections. But then we have situations whereby after people vote, they relapse and then just put their hands up for whatever decisions are being made by those that they have chosen or nominated to govern them. Now, if citizens are inactive, if citizens are passive, if citizens are parochial, we will not be able to ensure accountability, we will not be able to ensure prudence, and we will not be able to give the input that is required, to make government to respond to our concerns or our service delivery priorities. So, and I think this is one thing I would want to emphasize. Based on the work I have done over the years, I think the challenge now is for us to take up the responsibility of becoming more active political actors. And one of the challenges towards being an active political actor is joining the political parties. We should not only join the political parties, we should be active participants in the political party processes. That is the only way we can influence, and that is the only way our input will make sense in the governance, in the process of the governance. Like I emphasized earlier, you can only get elected into party positions, into political positions by going through the political parties. So why then do we give up our participation in the political party processes for individuals that most often than not do not even know what they're doing to decide for us? I always make this analogy. You see, when you wait until election day before you go to vote, what you are doing is what women do to rice. They first of all parboil rice. After parboiling the rice, then the second stage of it is to garnish it. So the political parties will have parboiled the rice by throwing up all the processes that leads to the nomination of candidates. So when you only wait for INEC elections, what you're only doing is garnishing the rice that has been parboiled. So I think it's high time for us to be active members of political parties and be part of the processes through which, candidates are even thrown up for elections. The other area we'll talk about is the typologies of political parties. And I think here I try to trace the historical evolution of political parties. Before the Second World War, the kind of parties we had were cadre parties. These were elitist parties that were only membered by the very high, the very noble in society. And after the Second World War, and with the coincidence of the Industrial Revolution, there was an increase in the number of educated or middle-aged income earners. And so parties become more mass-based. They became more open, So it became more ideologically oriented. It became, because you now had more rich people coming into the rich bracket. You had more industrial workers coming in who were interested in reforms, that could lead to the improvement of their work environment or even their businesses. So political parties then were tilted on ideologies, especially on the economic mode of production. And this was the time when there was a Cold War. There was the socialist bloc on one side and the capitalist bloc on the other side. But then with the collapse of the Soviet movement and the unification or the universality of capitalism, we have now entered into the realm of electoralist parties. Unfortunately, in most developing economies, what we have embraced is this electoralist party. They call them catch them all party. And that is why when people say political parties in Nigeria don't have ideology, then the question is, what ideology do they want to profess? So what the parties exist for now is just for electoral victory. So that's why we call them electoralist party. Today, you're a member of one party. Tomorrow, you dump the party, you join my party. All what they are after is to participate in the elections and to win the elections. And that diminishes the prospect of developing the parties. It diminishes the prospect of building strong membership. It diminishes the prospect of party discipline or even party supremacy. Now, these are some of the challenges. When these parties are not based on ideas, they are not based on identification of certain principles, then all what they want is to win power. And once they win this power, they win it for themselves as individuals. The last of my issue here is the structure of party administration. And I think this is a very huge challenge for party development in Nigeria. The way our parties are structured, unfortunately, is structured in the same way our federal system, our governmental system is also structured: the federal, the state, the local. However, there has been an over-concentration of political party power at the national level or at the federal level, at the detriment of the states or even the local level. So you find a situation whereby no real decisions are taken at the grassroots level. I was having a conversation recently with a party, and we're talking about the party manifesto. And I told them, the party manifesto you even have is national in outlook. This manifesto does not even take cognizance of the peculiarities in individual states, how much more individual local governments. So it then means that political parties are not even designed, to meet or to satisfy the peculiar socio-economic needs or developmental needs of people at the grassroots, because every decision made is appropriated to the national. And sometimes these national people, they live oblivious of what happens at the grassroots. So these are some of the challenges that continually affect the development of our political parties. I have mentioned some of these things in the course of my conversation. Ideological incoherence, the fundamental basis for having that ideology is even absent. There wasn't any conscious effort to mobilize people who are identifiable by certain strong-held opinion on issues. So it is bereft of any form of ideological leaning. Organizational and operational weakness. Unfortunately, when we say parties are electoralist in nature, it then means it's an all-comers affair. When it's an all-comers affair, then it then means he who has the greatest influence, usually in terms of money, becomes the umero duno. He becomes the decider. He becomes the major influencer, the people we call godfathers and godmothers. And once you have people who have either used their personal funds to found and fund parties, or people who have hijacked parties by virtue of their personal funds, what you end up having is they will stifle every effort to ensure that that party is organized in a way that it will be able to operationalize as an institution, because they will always want their interest to be promoted and to be protected. So that will continually negate the prospect of institutionalizing such political party. And this is what we see across board in Nigeria today. Financial dependence, of course. We have talked about the issue of membership. Membership is not only with respect to voting in the party or even voting for the party during election. Membership should also have the idea of financial subscription. So when members are recognized as financial members, it increases their influence in the party, it increases their influence within the leadership of the party, it increases their participation within the party. I always joke with this. When my grandfather was dying, we're going through his things, and one of the things I saw in one of the places that he considered the most secured was his membership card of the then Action Group, the party that operated in the Southwest between 1955 and 1966. And I asked, Baba, why are you holding on to this card? He said, it was with that card, that they were able to influence all of the things that happened to their communities. So they were holding regular meetings. In those meetings, they will make decisions. Those decisions will be gathered and taken to Ibadan, which was then the capital of the Western region. And after some time, you will now see development that is reflecting those decisions that they made in the village coming to meet them. So as far as he was concerned, he felt that was the golden era of political participation. Now, what is the value of the membership card of the parties we hold today? You are not invited to attend meetings. The membership card does not guarantee you the right to vote in internal party processes. And it does not even guarantee you be nominated into governmental office. So this is why people have become very skeptical about subscribing as members of political parties. And so once members don't subscribe, it then means the parties will lack the resources with which they are expected to function. It then also means that someone somewhere will hijack that party by virtue of being able to provide the funding that is necessary for the party to function. So you end up seeing people writing out the names of individuals that will be nominated, to emerge as party leaders, as well as to emerge as party candidates for election, without consulting the members of the party. And this is a very critical challenge that we have with parties in Nigeria. The fourth issue I mentioned here is politicized oversight. Regulation of political party is one thing that has not been adequately taken care of, despite the several provisions provided for in the Constitution and in the Electoral. And the reason is simple. If you ask INEC, if you assign the role of oversighting political parties to INEC, and the leadership of INEC is an appointee of a government that is formed by a political party, then you will have the dilemma of having that INEC to be able to look into the eye of his, who do you call it now, his benefactor or his sponsor, and tell him you have gone wrong in one way or the other. So we feel for adequate regulation, there should be two processes. There should be internal regulation, which should come from the membership, and there should also be some sort of independent regulation, which will be devoid of any political affiliation or any political interest. That way, the oversight body will be able to discharge its responsibility without fear or favor. We had the conversation, I think, flowing from the Justice Uwe's panel report. There was a recommendation to set up a political parties regulatory commission that will comprise of representatives from key sectors of the economy. Unlike in the US, the body that oversees political parties, they call it the Electoral Commission, is composed by political parties themselves. Political parties send nominations to those places, So it's not the president that will decide who, oversights the party. In the US, they decided that the parties will checkmate themselves by populating the commission that is responsible to regulate themselves, in an equal share. And then they decide among themselves who becomes the chair. And that chair is being rotated periodically. So these are the challenges. Now, if these challenges are being mentioned, what can be done to strengthen political parties? I think the first thing we have, especially having worked with the donor world for some time, one thing that we have found very useful towards strengthening political parties is looking at the electoral system itself. Because what goes on within the party is a derivative of the electoral process, the electoral system itself. And that was why until recently there was so much clamor for the need to revise and amend the Electoral Act, because they have noted that there are several lacunas, there are several gaps that politicians or even party leaders take advantage of within the Electoral Act or within the electoral system that needed to be reformed. So one of the things that needs to be done to strengthen party system or political parties is to actually look at the electoral law that provides the guidelines that regulates the law. Are those guidelines stringent enough? The regulators of the political parties, do they have the capacity to sanction, in one way or the other? So this is for me, the first on the table. The second process for party strengthening is party laws and policy. Now, if you go through the constitution of some of these parties, they even violate their laws themselves. The laws that they have enacted for themselves, they violate it. Let me give you an instance. There's a political party that has a 35% affirmative action for women in its constitution. And that means for every organ of the party, there should be a 30% affirmative action. But in that same party, you only end up having just the woman leader, who is probably 1 out of 16 or 17 members. Now, by direct implication, you don't even need to be a lawyer to know that that party has violated the law that it enacted for itself. So the second thing that has to be looked at to strengthen political party is the political party laws. What does the law of party says? Are these laws in tandem with the electoral law? Are they in tandem with the constitution? Are they implementable? Are they justiciable? These are some of the things that has to be looked at. The second one is the policy. Most times, I have even deviated from the argument of ideology. I would even better talk about policy. What policy coherence, what policy objectives, what aims and objectives are these parties trying to pursue? And let me tell you, the greatest challenge for political parties today is the complete absence of a policy-making hub, the capacity for them to even make policies. And when you are making policy, there's a process. You cannot make policy without getting input from the citizens, without getting input from your members. And I'm not sure anybody on this call has ever been in his house and a political party leader comes to him with a questionnaire, or you've ever been invited to a group or a grouping or a meeting or an outreach, and a political party in that meeting is asking you, oh, what is your opinion about the state of water in a particular location? Now, it is when they aggregate all these views and opinion of their members that they now sit down to analyze it, and then it becomes a policy for the party. And it is the policy that now becomes the manifesto, because it is from this policy that you are now able to pick some of the items that you will campaign on. So what in most instances, what we end up having are people being invited from America or specialists, and then they lock them up in a hotel room, and then from their head, they come up with issues, and then they just write these issues in a booklet just to fulfill some of the requirements by the regulators. Now, you cannot implement it because these were not things that came from the citizens. And even if you implement it, it will not align with the desires of the citizens because that is not what they have told you they want. So it's a serious challenge. So in strengthening political parties, we have to look at how to strengthen the capacity of parties to make laws that are implementable and to make policies that are also implementable. Internal party processes, they call them internal democracy. I think the greatest challenge for our political parties today is how the selection processes of the political parties are being conducted, both in terms of nomination for party leadership and in terms of nomination for party candidates. Those processes are at the best undemocratic. You know, it is exclusionary, it lacks transparency, it lacks any iota of democracy in most cases. And let me give you a simple instance. There are the prevailing issue of indirect primary, where you have delegate election. You have in most cases where in a state of over 600,000 people, political parties sometimes that claim that have majority members in Africa, like we like parading ourselves in this country, they will conduct delegate election for governorship seats, and then you have only probably 1,000 people as delegates. So you are having 1,000 people to now select a candidate that will become governor of over 600,000 people. That is, you don't need to be a mathematician to know that that is not representative enough. And this is done deliberately in order to exclude the larger population of the citizens or even members of the party from the processes of the party. And this goes back to the issue of the electoral system reform, because with the current, the newly amended Electoral Act, there are now more stringent provisions for how these internal party processes should be conducted. If you are using the direct primaries, there are stringent conditions. If you are using the indirect primaries, there are more stringent conditions. And if you're even adopting the consensus mode, there are also stringent conditions. So these are aimed at making sure that the internal party processes are conducted in a way and manner that reflect democracy and, of course, ensures adequate and effective participation of party members. The issue of inclusion, I don't need to over stress this. Inclusion has been a major challenge, and sometimes for us to achieve sufficient or adequate party strengthening, a lot of focus has to be paid on the issue of inclusion. There are some traditionally excluded communities, the women, the youth, and the persons with disability. And by statistics, even electoral demography, women constitute a half, if not of the electorates. We have also seen youths constituting nearly 30 to 40% of electorates. And these people are excluded from the party process. So for us to strengthen the parties, there has to be a mechanism towards ensuring that these excluded groups are being incorporated. Let's take for granted the fact that by the turn of democracy in 1999, they created the position of the woman leader and the youth leader. But that is just tokenistic. It is not representative of the number of women or the number of youths that are in these parties or that vote for this party. So how do we increase these numbers? And how do we even take advantage of the position of these youth leaders and these women leaders to mobilize these constituencies to participate more effectively in the party process? One of the areas we're also looking at now is the area of persons with disability, because we have seen by demography that they are constituting nearly 20 million of the Nigerian population. So they also need to be accommodated in the party processes. Party funding is also key. If we want to return power to the members of the party, then there has to be a mechanism for them to subscribe, as financial members of the party. And that should confer on them certain powers to participate in key decision-making within the party. Inter-party dialogues. How effective are party cross-breeding? One of the things IRI did is to lead the conversation that led to the establishment of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. And I think IPAC is trying to now bridge the gap between political parties and the external stakeholders. Most times, INEC speaks through IPAC, to parties. So there's need for peer review mechanism. There's need for comparing notes. There's need for continuous dialogue on some of the subject matters that affects political parties in Nigeria. And I think that's one area we need to look at in terms of strengthening. Campaigns. Campaign platform need to be enhanced. This issue of campaigning, calling musicians, sharing Asho Oki and Asho Ebi should stop. And I think this challenge should go to those of us who are young persons. When we go to campaign, indeed, most times the candidate doesn't even get to say anything. There will have been several songs, there will have been several chantings, and at the end of the day, the person will just come and he will raise his hand and then they will shout, and that is it. There is no room for articulation of the vision, the mission, and the policy thrust of the candidate that is standing for election. So how are you able to hold him responsible, when he gets into office? So one of the areas where party strengthening is important is on the issue of campaign platform. And I told you that should also derive from the policy of the party. Intra-party communication. I had mentioned the issue of the disconnect between the party and its members in the assembly, they call them the legislature, or even the executive. Once people emerge in Nigeria, they assume control of the party instead of being subject to the party. So the conversation that should be taking place between them and the political party that sponsor them is absent. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed. If you want to strengthen political party, then there has to be a mechanism to strengthen the relationship within the levels or layers of party, the national, the state, and the local layers of the party, as well as between the party functionaries and those who are members of the party serving in governmental position. Citizen engagement, I cannot overemphasize this. The rate at which political parties engage citizens will determine how much that party is able to reflect the priorities and concerns of the citizens. It should be ongoing conversation. We have tried in the past as IRI to facilitate conversation between political parties and their citizens. In some cases where we did it, that was the first time it ever took place. Indeed, we even have situations where party leaders or even elected officials are scared of going to have engagement with their citizens. And it's a two-way traffic. The citizens come to ask unwieldy questions. Some people want to marry additional wives. Some people want to, do things, unprintable things, placing unnecessary demand on these party leaders or these elected officials, which makes them run away. On the other hand, too, because these party officials or party or government officials have failed to live up to responsibility, they are also scared of coming to face the electorate. But one of the inevitable ingredients for effective party process is citizens' engagement. There has to be a constant consultation with the citizens to gauge the performance and to seek the consent. Organizational development. I think one of the things that has to be done is continuous training and retraining of party officials on their roles and responsibilities. Look, on this platform, we can take this for granted. Most of the parties, most of the individuals that contest for party positions, they don't even care what the responsibility of those positions are. I can tell you for free, we have financial secretaries of political parties that know nothing about financial processes. And they are financial secretaries, they are treasurers. I think it is only the legal advisor that there's an emphasis that the person must be a lawyer. Every other position can be contested by a novice or an idiot. So it then means that you get people who don't know what their responsibilities are to occupy positions, and they don't know what to do. So to strengthen parties, there has to be organizational development that emphasizes on training and retraining of occupants of particular offices. Unfortunately, we have also seen instances where you train these individuals, but because what you have trained them to do, if they do it, it will conflict with the interest of the person that has placed them in that position. They will decide not to do it. and then the party will continue to suffer. So that notwithstanding, I think for every time there's a turnover of elected officials, there has to be certain elements of democracy, of organizational capacity building. And this is one of the major emphases of development partners, to try to equip these individuals with skills required for them to perform their roles. Critical opposition. Now, I think we are in an environment where we don't like opposition. That is the truth. But democracy flourishes when there is opposition. So how do we ensure that opposition is not destructive? Opposition should exist. It should not be destructive. It should be constructive. And that opposition should provide alternate opinion on governance. So if you are opposing the view, if you are an opposition party, you should have an opposing view on how better what you are criticizing could be done. And that is when we now say you have an alternative platform. And that also depends on your policy framework, on your policy proposals, as well as your ideology. Prospects, I am running against time. Round up by discussing what are the prospects, and this is quickly. I think the prospects for us are high. Number one, because I think in Nigeria, democracy has come to stay. I have been asked several questions in several international fora that owing to the coup in Mali, in Burkina Faso, do we envisage any likelihood of coup in Nigeria? And my answer has always been, I don't see that happening. I think our people have come to terms with the reality that democracy brings better fortune than any other system of government. So that means with the flourishing, with the stability of democracy, that means there is more time for political parties to grow and to get more developed. Increased participation of youth. Incidentally, this is a youth platform. Youth should become more interested in participating in party politics. And your participation should not only be at the higher level, you should also be interested in participating at the lower level, where sometimes your resources can enable you to reach and conquer. And we should also not be only interested in participating for elective positions. We should also participate to want to aspire for party positions. When indeed you take over the party, then you can determine who becomes the candidates of the political party. Increased citizens' demand for accountability. I have mentioned this before now. Active citizenship leads to active demand for accountability. And I think this is, I think we are beginning to see some of these changes, and I think it's something that should be sustained. Institutional reforms. This is something that should also continue to be ongoing. Democracy rests on institutions. How these institutions perform goes a long way to determine the strength of the democracy and, of course, the benefits of development that can accrue from democracy. So there is conscious effort to improve our institutions. And I think these efforts, if sustained, will rub off positively on our political parties. So I think I've tried to capture both the pros and the cons. I just hope I have not discussed more of the challenges than the prospects. I would think that there should be time for us to ask one or two questions. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so very much, sir. I wish you could hear their clap, or you could hear our clap from here. Everyone is muted. That is why you might not be able to receive the thank you, but maybe the thank you will be coming in from the chat box. We want to be on fire like you, sir. So you should know that you are mentoring us, like I said from the beginning, from afar. You might not know us one-on-one, but we follow you passionately. Thank you. Thank you for what you are doing for Nigeria as a whole. For the Northeast, you were in Bauchi some years ago, and the political scene changed entirely when RI was in Bauchi. And we want to see more of that. Thank you so very much, sir, for that interesting package. It's a dialogue. Thank you for your contribution, for your impartation. We really appreciate you, sir. Like I told you from the beginning, our participant, that he is the deputy director of International Republican Institute, an organization that is committed in advancing democracy around the world. So thank you. I want to see more. I want to see questions coming up. This program started with like 30-something participants, but it grew up to 80, 82, 83 or thereabout, even though it has dropped to 77 now. And so you're talking to youth from the Northeast and from Nigeria as a whole. So I want to believe that we have taken this to heart, starting from the formation of political parties, the silent futures of party formation, the issues that affect political parties, how to strengthen political party as well. So you could see that for the participant, you could see that some things are embedded in some political parties' ideology, their constitution, their policy, but they are not really using them. The one that struck me most was when you have 35 affirmative action for the women, and you're giving them women leader. I advocate, and each time I go out to other states or we are talking to women, I do tell them I'm looking forward to a season, a time where woman can be a political party chairperson in this country. It's possible, but you have to come together as one. It's possible. We have so many political parties in Nigeria. They are not just two. They are not just three. But why can't you go and bring one to your state and you make a woman a political party leader, not a woman leader? I've never heard of man leader, and I want to believe that the women among us are taking challenge. So thank you so very much, sir. So question, please. So that question for Mr. Sunday Afolabi. Thank you. So maybe from the if I see your hand, then I'm going to give you time for you to ask your question. Maybe 1 or 2 person, but from the chat box, maybe let me read out 1 or 2 questions. Okay, yes, good presentation, sir. Thank you so very much, sir. Yes. Okay, I think I have a question here. Which type of political system would be best to solving political issues in Nigeria? Is it in the 1 or 2 or multi-political system, sir? Maina Gambo Jr. is asking.
Okay, so I was trying to respond to that, but I can just discuss it very quickly. So number one, there is no one solution fit all. Politics is not like mathematics, where 1 is equals to 1 plus 1 is equals to 2. So what matters is what do you envisage to be the ultimate goal? I mentioned the issue of countries like China that have adopted the one dominant party system, and what they consider more important to them is development than even democracy. They feel development is far more important to them than democracy. And how do I mean? Democracy prefers dissent. Democracy wants opposition. Democracy wants alternation. Democracy wants criticism. Development doesn't. Development wants a pattern, a stable pattern. Development wants unanimity. Development wants coherence. Development wants agreements. You know, so what do you prefer? So China, for example, prefers development. And that's why they say, look, we just want one party. And look, until recently, if you lose, it's not as if they don't contest election within the party. You contest within the party. If you lose within the party and you challenge the party, they kill you in China. It's very recently that they now changed it to life imprisonment because they feel you are not more important than China. If you have lost, it means the people don't want you for now. Go and sit down. So if you challenge it, they kill you, you know, in the past. So what that means is they consider the end, which is development, as more paramount than the process, which is democracy. But if you also consider democracy to be important to get into development, how then are you able to guide these processes of democracy to discourage people from taking undue advantage? In the United States, for example, they have two-party system, right? But these two-party system, you see the way they alternate power between themselves. And they do it in a way and manner that it aligns with the interests of the people. In Nigeria, we do multi-party because of the various divisions, ethnicity, and what have you. Let me take you to Anambra. I was part of the Anambra governorship election. And the people were clearly saying it that they will not vote for foreign parties. And these foreign parties they were referring to was PDP and APC. They felt ABGA was their own. And they voted for the ABGA governor as in the election. So they have identified with ABGA. And if there were no multi-party, would you have had ABGA as an alternative party? So it depends, that's when we say it depends on your political environment, and it also depends on the premium the people place on what they want. Do you want democracy? Do you want development? Do you want to guide your democracy to lead you to development? So these are issues that are subject to a lot of conversations here and there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question coming up from Farah Prince said, please, sir, when members of political parties default of the party, how is indiscipline checked in political parties?
So, Farah, if there is room for people to defect, why will I wait for you to discipline me? When you want to discipline me, I just go to the next party. And the next party is always there, willing and ready to accept me. And I think this goes back to the fundamental we mentioned when we started. The people who have formed these parties, they were not agreeable on certain fundamental principles that should have gone ahead before those parties are actually formed. There should have been a uniformity of ideas. There should have been an acceptance of the principal ideas that will run in these parties before they even join or before they form. But these parties are just open platforms for people to come and achieve their aspirations of getting elected. So it becomes difficult to instill discipline. That is number one. Number two, the kind of system we operate, the presidential kind of system we operate. Now, the governor, do you want to discipline the governor when it is indeed the governor that is funding the political party? How do you want to discipline the governor? If you want to discipline, you may end up losing his seat because he will defect. So that is why we say the parliamentary system perhaps have a more stringent control and discipline over the parties, right? The parliamentary, because it is the party they voted for, not the individuals. And it's the party that will now nominate individuals that will go into the parliament. That's what the proportional representative does. But here, everyone runs on the ticket. Once you get the ticket, in fact, you buy the ticket and then you become the candidate. And then having suffered to buy the ticket, you know, how do you want to sanction me? There was this workshop I had, and I likened joining political parties to win election to you wanting to drive from Abuja to Gombe, for example, and there's a broken down car. Usually those broken down cars are the political parties. I decide to fix the car, I buy the engine, I buy the tire, I put it in shape, and I drive it to Gombe. And I get to Gombe and you're telling me, why did I come with the car? I will just remove my engine and I will leave you there. So parties have been reduced to mere vehicles to get to power, unfortunately. So we also have to look at the system of governance as it operates. How do you think we can strengthen the parties to have more effective control? Party membership is more important. Members should pay subscription, and those subscriptions should be the funding that the party will be using for its activities, not to wait for individuals, wealthy individuals or elected individuals to fund it. Once you fund it, you will control it. They say he who pays the piper dictates the tone. Yes. Back to you, Nicholas.
Hear me? Okay. Thank you so very much, sir. I was told from the beginning that we'll be having another meeting by 2:30. There are other questions coming in, but because of time, we want to allow, or can you still take one or two questions, sir, before you leave?
So let me just run through them in 2 minutes. Can we all outgrow the problem of godfatherism in Nigeria? Yes. If you are obedient, if you join the party, if you contribute to the party, we will outgrow godfatherism. I agree that Nigeria is better with several multiple parties, but we need more strict party regulations. That is very important. Do our political parties have framework of our ideology like in the US? No. Presently, no. In fact, we don't have thinkers in the political party. We don't have policy hubs. We don't have intellectual divisions in the party that can think for the party. All what we have now are people who are interested to grab power, people who are nominated to occupy seats for individuals that will use them to grab power. So parties should begin to look at research capability. Parties should begin to look at how to make policies that reflect citizens' priorities. That is ideology. You don't need to be socialist or capitalist. It is the how. If you want to provide water, how? You want to provide electricity, how? We're all capitalists. So what do you want to do differently? That is what should matter now. And that is the policy. A third force, well, if the third force, you remember before now, it was only PDP. Some people came together and formed the APC. So if those third force can muster the money, they can muster the political clout, they can have presence in as many political units as possible, then why not? They will be relevant. But if they only remain on the pages of newspaper and in television houses, it will be very, very difficult. The real election takes place in the grassroots, not on Facebook, not on Twitter, but on the streets in the rural communities. So the third force has to get down there. And I think it's too late for any third force to make any impact for the 2023 election as we speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our take home should be, don't be a parochial or a passive, but what? Be actively participate. Participate, be active, be an active participant in governance. Our take home today is we all want you to be part of the system. Don't only sit and criticize. Please register. And what? Register to vote and register to be a member of a political party. In that way, that is the only way fatherism can be taken out of our country. And so we have all the powers in our hands, so why don't we use it? So thank you so very much, sir. Mr. Sunday, we appreciate your partnership, sir. Thank you so very much. Lead Thought is open for more collaboration, partnership. It's an electionary process, and we have a long way to go. We're in 2023, very soon. An election will begin soon. So the process has just begun. I know you have a lot around the country, more especially the Northeast. So we'll be ready to partner with you anytime you call us as well, to learn as well, to volunteer with the RRI. So thank you so very much, sir. Really appreciate you. So we want to let him go. Sheol should take over to read out some other items on the meeting. We appreciate your presence, sir. Thank you. So Sheol, over to you. Can you come up with other programs?
Okay, thank you so much, sir. We truly appreciate the time and the experience you have shared. It's indeed a wonderful time. Thank you so much, Mr. Sonny. We're hoping that we're going to see you again soon. I will believe that anytime we call upon you, you'll be willing to come again. Thank you, we appreciate. Okay, Mr. Nicholas, thank you so much for the wonderful moderation. It was wonderful indeed. So, guys, I'm sure you enjoyed today. All of you were part of the whole team. Mr. Nicholas must have read to you at the beginning that we're supposed to have 2 sessions today, but the second session was to be a deep dive into the Nigerian Constitution. We want to look at the constitutional arrangements for deepening democracy and citizen participation and the opportunities that it has for young people and women. We also want to look at the loopholes in the Constitution that we can be part of. A process of reforming. In line with that, I want to encourage you. We decided to shift the constitutional review session because we want to have a good time to look at it, and we're glad that we're all on track. So today it means that we're going to be closing early, and I want to encourage every group to do their work. Some groups are yet to respond to us on the assignments. Please don't forget that the deadline for all your activism and your reporting is the end of this month. So we wish you all a wonderful time. Your attendance for the second week is out, so I'm going to be sharing it after the class today. I'm going to be sharing it after the second class today. Thank you very much, everybody. Uh, Thank
Okay,
you very
maybe
much.
just a quick one. Are you there?
Have a wonderful day.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, maybe just a
Yes,
quick
sir.
one. Somebody is using
Yes, I can hear
Galaxy,
you.
and from beginning I said, please, you need to change your device name to your real name. And somebody is still using Galaxy. Please, can you change that? Thank you. While you take the poll.
Thank you, sir. I just put up the poll. So I want, yes, everyone, please take the poll. And if you know that you use the name Galaxy, reach out to Mrs. Ann quickly so that she can note that you're not using Galaxy and your attendance will not be put into a different name. Then those some people are also using some names. Somebody is using YCEP. YCEP is not your real name. So please take note, right? The poll is on, everybody. Only 18% responded.